She jabbed Ethan's phone with the pad of her thumb and froze on the message preview. Betrayal landed in the center of the kitchen like a plate dropped from a counter. Hard, loud, impossible to ignore. You sure he's coming tonight? The preview read, followed by a timestamp and an address that matched a hotel block downtown. Maya held the phone out without thinking. Ethan, she said, voice even but sharp, and the first confrontation began in the apartment entryway. Maya moved through the rest of the evening with one root feeling: betrayal. She had no plan except to force the truth into light. The apartment lights hummed above them. She set the phone on the island so the small preview glowed between them. Ethan's hands hovered over the counter, then folded. Maya, it's not what it looks like, and his smile came too quick. His practiced cadence landed like a trained response, not an answer. Within 5 sentences the problem was clear: a suspicious message, a hotel address, and a partner who would not yet admit the full story. Maya tugged the edge of her sweater and looked at Ethan's face for micro moves. She remembered the thin scar along his jawline and the way his smile softened before it hardened into defense. She had lived with that smile for 6 years. She thought she could read it. Now it read like a foreign line of text. She stepped closer and spoke with measured demand. Show me your phone. Ethan, he avoided her eyes. Maya, give me a minute. Let me explain. Her hands tightened into small fists. Her jaw set. In the kitchen light she spoke through compressed breath. Show me the message. Now the room narrowed to the rectangle of the screen and the 2 faces around it. Ethan held his shoulders like a man bracing against an elevator stop. He fumbled, offered a partial apology, and reached for excuses. The first emotion shift came quickly, doubt to anger. Her doubts hardened into a direct, sharp anger because his answer slid sideways instead of forward. Don't make this about timing. Lena's voice said from the doorway before Lena crossed into the apartment with a bag slung over her shoulder and rain on her coat. Lena did not knock. She stepped into the scene the way friends step into a fight: practical, immediate, present. Lena found the phone and the preview immediately. Ethan, she said flatly, and her hands went to the briefcase on the counter as if testing its weight. She scanned the preview, then moved toward the living room to pull Ethan out of a softer zone. Her presence created a new pressure. Maya, look for proof. Ask for proof. Don't let him talk around it. Lena's voice cut through rehearsed apologies and forced softness. They moved like a trio circling a problem. Maya paced to the living room. Ethan followed. Lena pulled a chair under the coat rack and sat, palms open. Maya's next action was not a question. It was a search. She unhooked Ethan's coat from a chair where he'd left it. She checked pockets. Her fingers found a folded hotel receipt. She unfolded it with the same slow care someone uses for a paper cut. The receipt had a time, a room number, and a name that matched a colleague they both recognized from Ethan's office roster. The second emotion shift occurred here, anger to a focused cold resolve. Her movement sharpened. The anger became an instrument. Maya did not shout. She placed the receipt on the coffee table and pushed the phone screen so the message preview and receipt sat side by side. This is not a mistake, she said. Ethan swallowed. It was a mistake, Maya. He stopped and ran a hand over his neck. He avoided her eyes. He didn't mean for you to find out this way. His words were short. They were a plea. They were also a dodge. Lena tapped Ethan's briefcase, opened it, and rifled through documents without ceremony. Her fingers stopped on a folded photograph in the inner flap. She pulled it out and held it up. The photo was blurred but identifiable. Ethan in a hotel lobby, an arm around a woman whose face the blur could not fully resolve. But the coat and posture matched a name in his office's contact list. Lena, that's Claire from marketing. Right? Ethan's lips tightened. Nothing at first. The room held a silence that carried the weight of an elevator shaft. The group moved to the home office where Ethan kept his laptop. Maya slid the laptop into view and Lena tapped the trackpad until cached images appeared. One image, time-stamped, linked the receipt to a late-night event. a company after-party and a hotel room charge. The evidence multiplied from a suspicion to a pattern. This was not a single misstep. It suggested repeated concealment. Maya's breathing changed. She folded her hands, then let them fall. How long, Ethan? His answer came in a voice that tried for calm. It wasn't like that, Maya. It was one time, then he added, faster, I didn't want to hurt you. Maya's next choices were outward concrete. She stood and walked to the bedroom door. She opened a drawer, pulled a small jewelry box, and placed her thin wedding band inside. The action signaled a boundary. She did not scream. She did not cry at that moment. She performed a deliberate detachment. Lena stayed beside her and said, good. Don't wear it now. Lena's voice had the crispness of a person who has been asked to step into many emergencies and who knows what small rituals can buy a person time. Ethan followed them to the bedroom. He tried to explain with partial confessions and selective memory. Maya, it's complicated at work. There were dinners, conversations. I didn't cross a line I thought mattered. The phrasing was careful. Maya cut him with a simple, precise demand: no more evasions. Tell me the truth tonight. Who is Claire? When did it start? There were 3 rapid lines of back and forth between them now. Ethan, it started at the conference. Maya interrupted. When exactly? Ethan swallowed. 2 months ago. Lena, 2 months. Ethan. That's a pattern, not a mistake. The tension climbed because each answer produced a new object to hold. Maya found another receipt in a jacket pocket, a dated text thread on a second phone that Ethan kept in a desk drawer. A calendar entry marked dinner that matched hotel charges. The story tightened. This was not an isolated night. The evidence required an action from Maya. She moved to the living room, sat down, and let the air settle while she catalogued what she had. Her hands shook slightly when they hovered above the receipt pile. She inhaled and then spoke with a low, precise cadence. Ethan, did you ever plan to tell me? He looked at her the way someone looks at a cracked painting, an attempt to fix by inspecting rather than repairing. Meant to, at some point. I thought I could handle it. He said handle it functioned as a shield. It did not explain why he had hidden messages or why he had kept a second phone. Why the second phone? Lena, he fumbled. Ethan answered in a rehearsed rhythm. Work calls, it's easier. Lena leaned forward. Ethan, you are not being straight. Give Maya the whole thing. Lena's tone changed to a firmer cadence. The third emotion shift arrived, focused resolve to wary disillusionment. Maya felt it in the tautness of her shoulders and the hollowing behind her eyes. She kept asking questions. She kept arranging receipts and messages like evidence on a table. Each answer brought less repair and more loss. The apartment's quiet broke when Maya grabbed Ethan's coat and walked to the small cluster of shelves where he kept his travel bag. She opened it and pulled out a hotel key envelope that matched the receipt. She held it up. You lied about the late meetings, Ethan. You lied about staying late at the office. You lied about calls. He placed both hands up, a small motion of desperation. Maya, please. I never meant to hurt you. I made a bad decision. I'm sorry. It sounded hollow because the facts stacked beside his words. Lena, an apology is not a substitute for proof of change. Maya's mouth went thin. She spoke in an even tone. I need more than an apology. I need boundaries. I need honesty. She measured each word. The sequence escalated into their most dangerous scene, the rooftop. Maya insisted they go up. She wanted the city as witness. She wanted a place where the lights and the distance would force a raw, unedited exchange. They climbed in silence. The elevator ride was a succession of small movements, fingers on the railing, the soft ding of floors. On the rooftop, the wind pressed at Maya's coat. The city shone below with offices still lit. She turned to him. Ethan's breath steamed in the night air. On the rooftop, the confrontation became compressed and urgent. Maya started with a short, direct sentence to tell me the whole truth now. Ethan tried to arrange his voice into a plea. Maya, I swear I never thought about leaving you. This was reckless, a line I crossed without thinking of the consequences. He ran a hand over his neck and avoided eye contact. Lena stood a few steps behind Maya with her hands in her pockets and said, "Say her name if it's someone from work. Say where you met. Say why you lied." She spoke rapidly, snapping the conversation into questions. Ethan named Claire. He the words slowly and then quickened it. "Her name is Claire. We met at the marketing event. It started with drinks. It didn't feel planned at first." Maya's face tightened. Did you sleep with her?" Ethan closed his mouth and then admitted, yes. The rooftop absorbed the confession in the cold air. The fourth emotion shift moved from exhaustion to stunned disbelief for Maya. Her breath came in short lines. She put her hand against the rooftop railing as if steadying herself against the revelation. They argued with quick exchanges. "Maya, why? Ethan, why hide it?" "Ethan, I was ashamed. I thought I could fix it without hurting you." Maya replied. "Fix what?" "By lying. By carrying a second phone." I panicked. "I'm sorry," Lena interjected. "Sorry doesn't remove the receipts or the photos, Ethan. It doesn't make the timeline vanish." The rooftop wind turned their sentences into staccato pieces of truth. Ethan stepped toward Maya and reached for both hands. His movement was a pleading attempt to convert words into action. Maya flinched and did not take his hands. She tested him with a single, precise demand. "Go now. Leave the apartment for the night. Do not come back until you can show me you are willing to change." His answer came with a voice that tried to be both submissive and believable. "Maya, I will do anything. I'll go to counseling. I'll change my hours. I'll cut contact. Please." He listed solutions as if reading a checklist. Lena's reaction added a different pressure. "Ethan, do you know what honesty looks like? It looks like turning over the phones, deleting contact lists, going to couples meetings. It looks like evidence of sustained change. Not a list of promises at midnight." Her lines were short and authoritative. Ethan nodded, eyes wet. He'll do whatever it takes, but Maya's face did not uncrumple. Back inside, the apartment felt like a room where decisions could be performed. Maya went to the bedroom and removed a framed photo from the dresser. It was a picture from a vacation, Maya smiling, Ethan's arm around her shoulder. She did not say anything. She placed the photo face down. Lena watched. She touched Maya's arm and said, "You do not owe him immediate forgiveness. You owe yourself time." Maya nodded. Her silence was a kind of action now. They arranged immediate, concrete measures. Ethan agreed to leave the apartment that night. He took his briefcase, his spare phone, and a single suitcase. He packed with mechanical precision. Lena helped him load the car without conversation. Before he left, Ethan turned to Maya and spoke 2 short lines. "I'm sorry. I know saying it isn't enough. I will prove it." "Maya, start with nothing more to hide." He walked out. The door closed. The aftermath in the bedroom was quiet and deliberate. Maya took the thin wedding band from the jewelry box and slid it into a drawer. She did not break down. She performed small tasks. She poured water into a glass, folded a shirt, checked the window locks. Each movement was practical. This was the action of someone reorganizing the perimeter of her life. Lena stayed until dawn, sitting on the edge of the bed, her scarf wrapped tight, offering advice in quick, concrete sentences. "Call her if you need documentation. Keep receipts and screenshots. Lock down passwords." Lena's presence gave a steadying architecture for decisions. Maya slept in small stretches. She woke with the city light slicing the curtains and the weight of a choice still raw. The chapter's mini cliffhanger arrived when a new notification buzzed on her phone at 6:42 a.m. She reached across the mattress and saw an incoming email to Ethan's work address with the subject line, "Expense dispute, hotel charge." The email suggested someone at the office had noticed the same anomaly. Maya held her breath, then sat up. This new external event changed the field. The private betrayal was now moving into public consequences. She called Lena and read the email aloud. Lena's quick assessment was pragmatic. "Keep that. Save everything. This could force accountability at work. If you choose that route." The word accountability hung like a tool, not a sentiment. Maya's next choices would involve others beyond the rooftop and the apartment, her, possibly colleagues, and perhaps a lawyer. These were not words about fate. They were actions to shape outcomes. By the end of the chapter, Maya sets a boundary and a small plan. She tells Lena she will not accept a rushed reconciliation. She requires documented evidence of change. She also decides, concretely, to move out of the bedroom for a while and sleep on the couch to remind herself that she can reclaim choice day by day. The final paragraphs list actions rather than reflections. She packs a small overnight bag for herself. She places the hotel receipt in a labeled envelope. She texts Ethan, "Leave your keys with the doorman. We'll speak after we both have proof of change." The message is short, the wording exact. The chapter closes on a situational beat. There is no long speech or poetic resolution. Instead, Maya locks the bedroom door behind her and places the envelope with receipts into a desk drawer labeled "Do Not Lose." She turns the key, slides the thin wedding band into the jewelry box top, and moves the box to a shelf out of reach. Lena stays to help reorganize small paperwork and to make a list of the next morning's tasks. Ethan is outside the apartment with his suitcase. The chapter's conflict resolves into a temporary separation and a set of conditions for any future reconciliation. Maya does not promise forgiveness. She promises herself clarity and time. The last line of this chapter is Maya's short instruction to Lena as she hands over the envelope. "Keep this safe. We'll see what happens next." Maya stepped between the revolving door and Ethan the moment his key card lit the lobby turnstile. "Why is there a hotel address on your phone?" she asked, holding his device like evidence at a crime scene. Betrayal sat in the white marble like a hard object you could not ignore. The doorman watched from his desk. Two neighbors paused behind glass. Ethan's hands tightened around the briefcase handle. He did not answer at first. She had jabbed Ethan's phone with the pad of her thumb earlier and frozen on a message preview. The preview had read, "Are you sure he's coming tonight?" with a time stamp and an address that matched a hotel block. That image of the preview followed her into the lobby and pushed her forward now. Maya's voice was steady, narrowed by a single purpose. She wanted a direct account, not a practiced apology. "Ethan, tell me what that message means." "Maya, tell me who sent it." She spoke his name twice, using it like a tool to keep him present. He blinked, ran a hand over his neck, and offered the quick, practiced smile she had learned to distrust Maya. "It's not what it looks like," he began. Neighbors craned their necks. A faint hum of the building's evening filtered through. Ethan tried the old move of deflection. "You shouldn't have looked at my phone," he said. His voice had the polished baritone Shed heard in boardrooms and client calls. Maya did not flinch. She stepped closer, palm pressed flat to the glossy wall, where the building's directory reflected their faces. "Don't tell me that, Ethan. Tell me who sent that message and why there's a hotel address." Her breath moved in small, controlled bursts. He nothing for a long count. The lobby's chandelier cut thin lines of light across his suit. Maya felt suspicion sharpen into anger. She pictured the preview again, the question, the timestamp, the hotel block. She also pictured the mornings he had left early for work and the evenings Shed waited with dinner on the stove. Those images were concrete. They pushed the confrontation forward. Ethan shifted his weight. "It was a client meeting," he said, "a late client meeting. You know the fund pitch." He reached for his briefcase. "Can go upstairs. Get the materials." "Stop, Maya." Her voice stopped him physically. "Don't walk away with the briefcase. Don't make it a performance." "Who is she?" Neighbors lowered their voices but listened. A man in a delivery jacket hovered near the potted plant and pretended not to stare. A woman with a stroller glanced from her phone to the couple and back. The building felt small and exposed. Maya's anger moved into a precise demand. She wanted specifics, names, places, dates. Anything less would be a sentence of uncertainty. Ethan's mouth opened, closed. Lena's name arrived in Maya's head unbidden. Lena, who had answered when Maya had texted and asked if she would come. Lena's directness was a private promise. Maya remembered the string of quick messages she had sent while waiting in the apartment, the short sentence, "I need you." Lena had replied within minutes. A neighbor touched the elevator button. Maya pressed hers, pulling Ethan and the witnesses into a smaller space. The elevator doors hissed shut with a polite ding. The air folded in. Ethan reached to steady himself against the mirrored wall. He tried to meet her eyes, and then looked away when shame flickered across his face. Maya kept her phone on screen, the message preview visible like an open wound. And Ethan, did you go to that hotel tonight? She asked again. The elevator jostled once and someone cleared a throat. He inhaled and exhaled, which made his hand run over his neck. He was there with a client. He said we're late finishing a deal. He used the word deal quickly, as if speed would convince. Maya watched micro-movements, his fingers against the briefcase, the way his shoulders drew forward when he retreated into avoidance. Those movements shifted her suspicion to a more physical anger. She clenched her jaw and felt her stomach tighten. Her hands trembled with the need for action. Call that client now, she said. Show me the name. Show me the message. Thread her demand, cut the space into smaller truths. He scrolled his phone with a nervous thumb. Minutes later, he shut the screen and handed it to her. There. See, it's business. Maya looked at the string of messages. The names were generic: meetings, feedback, confirmation, no obvious name. The message thread had been edited, she noticed, with gaps of blank timestamps. Those gaps felt deliberate. She flipped back and then forward. A photograph had been deleted. Ethan's mouth dropped open. He tried to explain and gave a tumbled sentence that did not land. Lena's arrival became a pressure she could count on. The apartment's security camera feed was still a question. Maya thought of the doorman's records. She walked out of the elevator and started up the apartment corridor without waiting for him to follow. They reached their floor. Maya pushed the apartment key into the lock and let the door open with a practiced motion. Ethan moved past her and paused at the living room light switch. His hesitation signaled something small but meaningful. He was deciding how honest to be in front of witnesses. Maya had already decided she wanted witnesses. Lena did not wait. She burst inside less than a minute after Maya had texted a single line, "I'm at the lobby." She slammed her tote on the table and looked straight at Ethan Cole Lena, using his full name like punctuation. Her voice carried tell Maya the truth right now. Lena's presence altered the tone. She anchored Maya's anger into action. Ethan tried a practiced smile. Lena, he stopped when Lena spoke again, cutting him off with a sharp look. You do not get to do that, Ethan. Not with Maya. Not here. Lena set her smartphone on the coffee table and tapped the screen, calling the doorman. Marcus. She said into the phone, tell me what time Ethan entered tonight, and whether he signed for any deliveries. She paused while Marcus spoke into the receiver. Bring the logs up. Now the doorman arrived within 10 minutes. Marcus was a large man with a voice that had no impulse to soften. He handed over a small ledger and then held up a faded printout of a security frame on his phone. He the time and the entry code number, and then set the printout on the table in front of them. The image showed a blurred figure crossing the hotel lobby door. The timestamp matched the message preview. Lena pushed the printout toward Maya. Maya's hands went cold. The elevator had felt small. The living room felt larger and raw. The printout's blur showed a shape entering a room that was not theirs. For a moment, she counted concrete facts, a record, a timestamp, a blurred silhouette. Marcus, did you recognize the person? Marcus looked at the printout and then at Ethan. He shrugged a shoulder. It wasn't clear enough, ma'am. But the delivery log shows multiple entries by that guest room number this month. Ethan's eyes closed a fraction. Nothing. Lena sat on the arm of the couch and kept her phone active. Ethan, you have to stop lying, she said. Tell Maya now. That's the only way you fix this, if it's fixable. Her words were plain. Maya felt suspicion morph into a steadier, angrier demand for truth. Ethan's breath left him in a small sound. He pushed both hands into his jacket pockets and then pulled out a folded paper. Didn't want you to find this like this, he said. He unfolded an envelope and placed a photograph on the coffee table. It was a hotel key card with a name scrawled on the back and a receipt. The receipt had a date and a time that matched the message preview. Lena leaned forward. Maya, she said. Look. Maya picked up the receipt. The hotel name was clear. There was a silence that had weight. Maya's stomach dropped and then anchored. She needed movement. Ethan, who is she? She asked. Her voice had lost its tremor. It was cold. He looked at her and finally spoke with a sentence that fell crumbed and raw. Name is Claire. She is at the firm. She's not a client. I met her at a work event. He tried to give context. It wasn't planned at first. Lena interrupted with quick lines. Ethan, stop framing it. Did you sleep with her? Lena's voice was quick and hard. Ethan's jaw clenched and unclenched eyes. He said simply. The word landed like a fact. Maya's hands curled into fists. She felt anger thin into practical control. She directed her movements to what she needed to do next rather than to how she felt. Ethan. Maya. The question was not rhetorical. She demanded detail. He inhaled, then exhaled. Don't know. It was a mistake. I was careless. I thought it wouldn't lead anywhere. I told myself it was nothing, but he stopped. He avoided her eyes. It happened more than once. He added, the last words breaking into the room like a revealed object. The new evidence shifted the argument. Lena's quick hands tapped on her phone again. Marcus, did you log multiple entries for that room? Marcus confirmed it aloud. There were 3 separate timestamps across 2 weeks. Maya put the receipt down and stood. She paced toward the window and then back. Her shoulders moved in a tight, small shake. She counted actions she could take. Secure documents, remove items, call someone for advice. Ethan took a step toward her and then stopped at Lena's hard glance. Maya, I am sorry, he said. The apology came with the practiced cadence Maya recognized. He used words that had comforted clients but not mended small broken things. Maya needed more than an apology. She needed a decision. Lena leaned forward, voice lowering and blunt. Maya, do you want him to stay here tonight? Lena's eyes searched hers. Maya folded her arms and kept her voice even. No. He needs to leave for the night. We'll talk later when there's time to be calm and honest. The decision had the shape of self-preservation. Maya's resolve hardened into action. Ethan moved to the bedroom doorway and began to gather a few things. He avoided touching Maya or the box she kept on the dresser. He folded shirts with a neatness that felt like rehearsal. Maya watched him, cataloging the small details, the threadbare cuff on a shirt he favored, the ink smudge at the corner of a receipt in his briefcase. Those things were real. They showed a life she had shared, and now a life she could examine. Before he left, Maya opened the top drawer of the nightstand and took out the thin wedding band she had stopped wearing openly. Her fingers found the band and her locket at the same time. She placed both in a small cardboard box and closed it with deliberate motions. The ritual was not metaphor. It was an action that marked a boundary. She placed the box on the coffee table in front of Lena. Ethan lingered in the doorway. Maya, please, he said. His voice had the polish of someone who had practiced pleading. She can explain. I want to fix this. I don't want to lose you. He looked at the box as if its presence made his words less plausible. Maya regarded him without rush. Tonight you leave. Tomorrow you answer specific questions. You call Claire, you tell the truth. We set a boundary. For now, leave. Her lines were plain and firm. He packed a small duffel and left without slamming the door. The sound of the elevator closing punctuated his exit. Lena sat down on the couch and pushed the coffee table toward Maya. Okay. First thing, I called Marcus because I knew he'd have records. Second, you need more than anger right now. You need paperwork and a plan. Lena spoke with quick, direct sentences. Maya nodded, fingers pressed to the edge of the cardboard box. They moved to the kitchen table. Lena spread the smartphone screen between them and called a lawyer friend. Maya listened to the quick exchange, heard a name and a time for a consultation. Lena's voice turned practical, listing a few steps: secure messages, change passwords, make a record. Maya dictated names and dates into her phone, each entry a small concrete act. A knock came at the door. Marcus stood there with a thin envelope and a second phone printout. He found more entries after I checked the delivery logs. Ms. Alvarez, he said. He set the envelope down on the table. Inside were copies of receipts showing different dates and a more detailed security log. Marcus' actions tightened the case. He quietly you for truth. I thought you should have these. Marcus' face gave nothing away. Maya opened the envelope and read the dates aloud. Lena confirmed them against the hotel's timestamps. The newly presented evidence moved Maya from shock to a focused plan. She did not collapse into long, interior grief. Instead, she wrote things down, phone numbers, times, who had been present. Each line was a small ordering of the cars. They paused when a message arrived on Maya's phone. It was from an unknown number and read, "I didn't want to hurt you." The text had no signature. Lena frowned and handed the phone back. "Block it. Run it past your lawyer, Lena." Maya pressed the block button and then took a breath. Her breathing slowed but did not soften. She kept her face controlled. They spoke in short exchanges about what to tell friends and family, what to do about shared accounts, and how to secure the apartment. Lena suggested she stay the night. "No, I want to sleep in my own bed. I need to be in control of that small thing." Lena accepted the answer and sat with the phone on the table, fingers restless. The chapter reached a small cliffhanger when Lena found one more line in Marcus' log that did not match the hotel's record. A maintenance entry that paired a room number with a residence package. It suggested someone had passed a note or item between residence and the hotel. Lena tapped the line and said, "There's more to this. Marcus, did you see any faces in the corridor that night?" Marcus hesitated and then said, "I saw a woman tie her hair up and walk fast toward the cab stand. I didn't get a clear look." That small, unexpected detail changed how Maya understood the pattern. It meant the liaison had movement beyond the single hotel visit. It suggested planning, not a stray mistake. Maya's suspicion shifted again into a concentrated clarity. Her questions were no longer about whether he had done it, but about how long and who else knew. The emotional current moved from raw betrayal to an organized course of action. She assembled a list of specific questions for Ethan: dates, times, names, locations. Lena insisted they document everything now. They set a time the following morning for Ethan to return and answer in full. Lena make him tell the whole thing in one sitting. No fragments. Maya agreed and wrote the meeting time on a sticky note. The act of writing reduced uncertainty. Maya wrapped the wedding band and locket in tissue and put them in a kitchen drawer instead of back in the bedroom. The gesture was small and deliberate. It kept those objects out of immediate reach. She then opened her contact list and tapped a name labeled Attorney Sarah. Her finger hovered, then tapped to call. The line connected. Sarah's calm legal voice asked one question after another and recorded dates. Maya answered in short sentences, naming names and times. Each reply felt like a stone laid in a path forward. Lena packed a small overnight bag and placed it by the door. "You should sleep, Maya. Tomorrow will be long." Maya moved to the window and looked at the city through the glass. She measured the light on the skyline and felt concrete exhaustion press against her eyelids. She did not allow herself a sweeping reflection. She concentrated on the next task: send copies of the receipts to Sarah, change their shared account passwords, and prepare a list of questions for Ethan. The final action of the night was not a speech. It was a phone call and a pressed send. Maya dictated a short message to Sarah: 3 lines, receipts attached. Security printouts attached. Need next steps. She tapped send. Lena reached over and squeezed her wrist once. Marcus closed his ledger and smiled politely, keeping distance. Outside, the elevator chimed. Inside, Maya sat at the kitchen table with the cardboard box closed beside her and the receipt spread like a small map. She had not forgiven. She had not decided to stay. She had done the next things. Lena folded the note with the appointment time and slid it under the box. The last sound was the low ping of the lawyer's confirmation text. Maya set the phone down and exhaled. Lena watched the message go and then stood, moving to switch off the living room lamp. Maya watched the lamp go dark and reached for the cardboard box. She placed it in the top drawer of the kitchen cabinet with the receipts beside it and closed the cabinet with 2 firm clicks. Outside, the elevator lights blinked. Someone walked down the corridor. Inside, Maya sat forward and picked up her phone to prepare the list she would give Ethan when he returned, the list that would force full answers in the morning. Maya pressed the gold locket into her palm on the rooftop when Ethan stepped into the light, suitcase in hand, and suspicion tightened the muscles at her jaw. He did not come empty-handed. His posture announced a plea before his words. Maya, he said, but she heard the click of the suitcase latch as if it were an accusation. The rooftop railing was cold under her fingers. The city below hummed with distant traffic and a cluster of yellow windows. Within those first breaths the problem was clear. She had found signs of another life on his phone and in his habits, and now he had come to explain. She had seen the hotel address on his phone 2 nights earlier and watched his key card light the lobby turnstile in Chapter 2. That memory sat raw inside her like a bruise. Suspicion had guided her into the lobby then. Now, suspicion kept each of her sentences short and exact. She kept her shoulders forward, the way she always did when she was guarding herself. Maya did not look surprised. She looked ready, like a person who had practiced a difficult movement until it hurt. Ethan set the suitcase near the rooftop door and ran his hand over his neck. He didn't mean for this to spill into our life, he said. His voice was a rehearsed baritone, the same tone that smoothed boardroom arguments, and Maya noticed how it faltered on the last 3 words. She folded her fingers over the locket until the metal warmed. Lena's voice came through her memory direct, plain telling her to demand proof. That memory pushed Maya to speak first. Why did you bring a suitcase, Ethan? Maya. Her voice did not tremble. It held a measured firmness. She stepped back a half-pace to put distance between them, and to stop any instinct that might soften her words. Why at midnight? She added. Ethan exhaled. Because I thought if I explained everything, you'd. He stopped. His hand moved toward the suitcase as if he might open it and reveal something that fixed everything. Maya's suspicion tightened into anger for a beat, anger at the idea that explanation could erase what she had found. Her eyes sought his, searching for the practiced eye contact that meant truth, not the quick, soft smile that had once gotten him sympathy in interviews. He crossed to her and lowered his voice. I never wanted to hurt you. The phrase landed with no weight. Maya had catalogued those words before. She stepped away again. The city sounded larger suddenly, a siren 2 blocks over, someone laughing from a terrace below. Those external notes became a metronome for the conversation, a reminder that time moved forward regardless. They moved inside to the living room because the rooftop made it easier to speak and harder to face the immediate facts. The smallness of the apartment narrowed the space for evasion. Ethan followed, keeping 3 steps behind. Ethan pushed the mediation letter across the tile and said, I need 5 minutes, while Maya kept her hand on the door frame and the gold locket warm in her palm. Betrayal sat on her tongue before she spoke. She had sharpened that feeling into questions since she first saw the hotel address on his phone. You came here on purpose, Ethan? Maya, breathing against the stairwell's fluorescent hum. The lobby clock read late. The doorman's gaze skimmed them and then returned to his paperwork. Maya had not planned to open her door to him again. She had read the messages, watched him try to explain in the marble lobby earlier, and heard the rooftop plea that night where he left a suitcase and a dozen half words. She remembered the click of his suitcase like an accusation. She remembered Lena handing her the message that had rewritten the timeline. Tonight, the cold of the elevator and the hard mediation note made the choice immediate: listen or lock the door. Maya's fingers tightened around the locket, her jaw fixed. Ethan's shoulders were drawn inward, a practiced posture that had carried him through boardrooms, now unraveling at the edges. Beside him, Naomi Collins kept her hands folded, a bag of folders at her feet. Ethan cleared his throat. Maya, why are you here, Ethan? Maya cut in. Her voice was steady. She did not let the word apology land before she had a demand. Why now? Ethan stepped forward and thrust the paper toward her mediation. I can't keep doing this by text. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Please. Let me explain. He her name more than the others' names, as if repetition could build a bridge. Maya did not move. Lena's footsteps appeared behind her. Lena had arrived on cue, the scarf pushed back from her neck, her phone in hand like an accusation and a lifeline at once. Maya, Lena. Quick and low. You don't have to do this in the doorway. Let them in for 5 minutes. Lena's arrival shifted the standoff into a negotiation. Lena's voice carried a different weight than Maya's. Maya, listen to me. Leneo, owe yourself 5 minutes to hear what he says. Then you can close the door, and that's it. Lena set her tote bag on the floor and touched Maya's shoulder. The touch said, "I'm here, don't close off entirely." Maya let the threshold hold them. She pictured the message preview on Ethan's phone from Chapter 1, the hotel address she had found. She remembered stopping him at the revolving door in Chapter 2. She remembered the rooftop when he had pressed the locket into her hand and the suitcase had clicked. Those concrete moments were her ledger now. She stepped back only enough to let Naomi and Ethan into the living room on one condition: total honesty. They moved into her apartment like guests entering a room with a decision already written in the air. Maya set a chair, then leaned against the windowsill and watched Ethan fold and unfold his hands. The city lights cut through the glass. Maya kept the locket cupped and visible on her palm. It was not a metaphor. It was a small object that had once served as quiet proof of a life they shared. Naomi placed a folder on the coffee table and slid a sheet toward Maya. I set up appointments. Naomi plainly can show you dates. I can read you a plan he agreed to follow. She spoke with the kind of measured cadence people use when they are trained to slow down. Paniston has started therapy. He has resigned from the project that took him away. He wants to be accountable in a formal way. Maya's shoulders tightened further. She let suspicion become a question that needed proof. Why would you show me dates? Why would you come here with a stranger and a resignation letter? Ethan's jaw moved. Because I can't keep asking and expecting you to take my word. I'm asking you to see that I'm changing. He referenced his watch, the resigning note, the appointments. He used objects like a negotiator uses evidence. Lena took a seat and did not look at Ethan. She pulled out her phone. I have a message from her, Lena. Voice pitched like she was about to show a photograph. He asked for it this afternoon. Lena tapped the screen and pushed it toward Maya so she could read without Ethan seeing the sender's name. Maya read the lines aloud, voice flat. The message was not a love note. It was an exchange that contained a list of demands. Meet at a certain time, bring money, answer specific questions. The words had a tone that implied pressure. Maya's stomach dropped. This was the twist she had not expected. The affair was not simply a joyful escape for the other woman. The messages suggested coercion, logistics, a ledger of favors and expectations that made the betrayal mechanically worse. Silence pooled in the living room. Ethan's eyes ran over the message and then to Lena's face, which had turned closed. He touched his neck and then his watch. He didn't know about those demands, he said. Too quickly. If I had known, I would have stopped it. His practiced smile faltered. Lena shook her head. Ethan, that doesn't make sense. The strings in the messages line up with the nights you were gone. This wasn't only about a fling. She wrote specific times to meet. She wrote consequences if you didn't show. Lena looked at Maya. Maya, this changes what it means for you to be betrayed. Maya's hands went cold. The suspicion she had started with sharpened into anger, and then into a new, harder question: who else knew? The living room suddenly felt like the place where all the earlier events collected and demanded identification. She remembered the rooftop when Ethan had come with a suitcase, but no clear explanation. She turned to him and asked him directly, Did you ever lie to me about where you were? Ethan swallowed. He avoided her ices, the single word fell like a hinge. His body lost the straight line, had tried to make he kept a second phone. He ran a hand over his neck and then let it drop. He lied about how long it was. I'm sorry, Maya. I am truly sorry. The apology landed but did not erase the ledger of nights she had counted. Lena's voice came quick and sharper than, how long? She his name like a launch. How long did she keep your time? The back and forth became rapid, Lena pushing, Ethan stuttering, Maya listening for details and for the shape of truth. 4 months, Ethan admitted he met her at night. I told myself it was because of distance. I told myself it was nothing. I lied to you every time I said I was working late. He blinked hard. There were times she asked things, Maya. She for money once. She things that made me feel trapped into continuing. I didn't stop it. I should have stopped it. He swallowed again. Maya felt a shift inside her that was physical, a loosening of the muscles in her throat and a tightening behind her eyes. Her voice dropped to a measured cadence. Ethan, say it clearly. Did she force you to do something you didn't want? Or did you choose this? She the question like a test. He looked at Naomi. Naomi's eyes met his and then dropped. Ethan's hands trembled slightly. There were moments I felt trapped, he said, not by threats. By my own cowardice. I kept it because it was easier than telling you the truth. I kept the second phone because I didn't want you to see the pattern. I was wrong. He Maya's name, and the room folded into the weight of that name. The confession rearranged the stakes. This was the chapter's climax in motion, the full confession. Maya's world did not end in an instant. It reorganized around new facts. Lena repeated out loud details from her copy of the messages. Naomi slid a calendar onto the table and pointed at attendance records. The evidence and the admission fit together into a clearer picture than Maya had had on the rooftop. Maya stood and walked to the window. She held the locket against her chest and felt its worn metal under her fingertips. She could name her next action before she spoke it aloud. She turned back to Ethan. "Oh, not ask me to forgive you tonight." She said, "Oh, not ask me to fix what you broke with promises. Show me real boundaries. Show me proof you can be away from her for good. Show me a plan I can verify. Then we can talk about whether this is something we can ever rebuild." Her voice was precise and stripped of flourish. Ethan's face collapsed. He lunged toward the coffee table and almost knocked his briefcase to the floor. "Maya, please," he began. "Oh, Maya." She placed the locket on the table where he could see it. It was the same small object he had seen on the rooftop. She picked up the thin wedding band that had lived in a jewelry box until recently and held it out instead of putting it on. Her action was deliberate, return and boundaries, not a theatrical renunciation. "This is for you to understand what you lost." She said, "Not for me to decide," yet she did not hand it back to him. She slid it toward the edge of the table and then set it back on her palm. Ethan reached and then pulled his hand back. He looked at Naomi. Naomi nodded once, small and solemn. Ethan ran both hands over his face and then set them on his knees. "He will prove it," he said. "I'll give you access to the records. I'll hand over the second phone. I'll do whatever you need." His words were rapid now, no longer polished. "Maya, I want to try to fix this if you'll let me try." Lena watched him, like she had been watching since the first discovery. "Maya, what do you want?" Lena. She had been the one to fetch the messages earlier that day. She had built the case that changed everything. Her presence here had affected the course of the conversation. Maya turned to Lena and answered, "Time. Proof. Space so I can choose without pressure." She used tangible demands so they could be checked. Naomi spoke up, slow and patient. "He can provide records of sessions." Cole agreed to them. "If you want, I can sit in on future conversations in a formal way. So there is transparency." She looked at Maya and then at Ethan. "But change happens through actions, not words." Ethan's reply was a low sound, no longer a full sentence. The room waited. Outside, a taxi honked at a curb. The world continued in its noisy ways while they rearranged the furniture of their private lives. Maya wrote down terms on a small notepad she kept in the kitchen drawer. No contact with the other woman. Surrender the second phone. Weekly updates with Naomi for 3 months. No shared accounts, time apart to be measured in weeks, not hours. She slid the pad across the table like a practical document rather than a declaration. Ethan read it slowly and nodded. He signed his name at the bottom, hands shaking. When the paper was folded and placed in Ethan's briefcase, the immediate conflict had a temporary resolution. He rose and moved to the door. Ethan paused with one hand on the knob. He turned back once to Maya. He said, "I am so sorry." The sound was small. Maya did not answer. She crossed the living room to the entryway, handed him the thin band and the locket together on the palm of her hand. She did not say the words that would tie them back together. She lifted her head and met his eyes only long enough to let him see that she expected proof, not promises. Ethan took the items with both hands and then left without another word. The door closed behind him with the soft click of a lock. Maya slid the deadbolt into place. Lena folded into a chair and exhaled the breath she had been holding. She reached for Maya's wrist and squeezed it. "You did it your way, Lena." Her voice was bright with relief and steadiness. "You didn't let him stage manage you." Maya sat down on the windowsill, the locket cool now between her fingers. The city lights reflected on the glass, landing in bars of concrete light that meant nothing without action. She set the locket on the sill and rested her forehead against it for a moment. Her face was not a portrait of metaphors. It had lines of tension and a mouth that tasted metallic from adrenaline. Lena stayed and made tea. She moved through the apartment with purposeful gestures, boiling water, crushing the tea bag between her fingers, setting a mug on the coffee table. She talked quietly about errands and small plans, not to distract but to return the room to ordinary details. Her pragmatism steadied Maya's hands. In the hour after Ethan left, Maya catalogued what had changed. The confession had clarified the scale of the betrayal. Lena's message had shifted the meaning of previous nights. Nama's appointment records promised a measurable route, but Maya understood that repair required time. She made a list of boundaries in a neat column on her notepad. No contact for 30 days, direct access to phones, separate accounts, weekly check-ins with Nami. A knock at the door interrupted the quiet. Maya's body tightened at the sound. She looked at Lena. "Who is it?" she asked. No one answered immediately. Lena moved to the peephole and peered out. "It's the doorman. Lene says a package arrived for you." The external event arrived, like punctuation. A ring, a footing outside. An ordinary intrusion reminding them that life did not stop at emotional reckonings. Maya opened the door enough to let the doorman hand over a small brown envelope. He nodded and left. Maya slit the envelope open with her thumbnail. Inside was a receipt from Ethan's office, proof that he had turned in the project he had named earlier. The document had the resignation date and a stamped confirmation. It was a simple piece of paper, dull and factual. It made no promises, yet it belonged on her list of verifiable actions. Lena smiled briefly and then sobbed. "This is one thing he did today. Lena, it's not everything, but it's proof he did one of the things he promised." She placed the receipt beside the notepad. The arrangement of paper and objects made their decisions concrete. A signed note, a receipt, the locket on the sill. Maya felt 2 emotion shifts in the course of the evening, suspicion turning to anger when the coercive messages appeared, then anger moving into a measured clarity when Ethan admitted the second phone and agreed to concrete terms. Each shift showed up in a movement or a voice change rather than a label. She noticed the changes in her hands, the way they unclenched when she wrote the list, the steadiness when she gave Ethan the band. The night narrowed. Lena spoke about tomorrow calling Nami to confirm records, checking with the bank for separate account setups, arranging a lock on their shared subscriptions. Lena's speech was all action. Maya answered with small concrete commitments. She would expect Nama's reports on Fridays. She would not respond to Ethan's texts unless they were part of the agreed verification route. and she would take 3 weeks before deciding whether to meet again in a monitored setting. Before Lena left, she hugged Maya and said, "You did this exactly the way you needed to. You set terms, he signed them." That's a step. Maya felt the hug like a practical brace rather than emotional solace. It steadied, but it did not absolve. When Lena's footsteps faded down the hall and the elevator dinged, Maya returned to the windowsill. She picked up the locket and turned it over in her hand. The metal had a hairline scratch she had never noticed before, a small mark at the hinge. She ran her thumb across that tiny imperfection and thought of the rooftop where the suitcase clicked, and of the lobby where she demanded truth. Each small object in the room mapped to a moment of evidence. She placed the locket back on the sill and locked the bedroom door as well, not to hide, but to create a border. The sense of the night had changed from a single event into an arranged course of action. She had not forgiven him. She had not rejected the possibility of repair. She had created requirements, documents, records, time, and made him sign that he would follow them. The chapter's conflict had been resolved for now. Ethan had admitted, agreed to terms, and left. The immediate crisis ended in a definite act. Maya turned off the living room lamp and left a small lamp on the windowsill for a soft pool of light. She checked the list one more time and wrote a new item at the bottom: find someone to review the messages with her in private. The practical motion became a plan rather than a feeling. She set the notepad aside, slid the locket into a small velvet box, and closed it with a deliberate sound. The final action of the night was simple and concrete. She stood at the door and bolted it shut. The sound of the deadbolts sliding home was a physical event that tied the end of the chapter to a specific action. Maya placed the velvet box with the locket inside a drawer and turned the key. The drawer clicked. She sat on the windowsill, hands folded over the box, and breathed in, counting to 5 slowly by the light of the skyline. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, the items on the table, paper, signature, receipt, stayed in place as proof that the conversation had taken shape and that the terms existed. Maya had set the rules. She had required proof. The night closed with a lock, a box, and a plan to watch for honest actions. The door remained closed. The physical motions marked the end of the immediate reckoning and the start of a measured, deliberate path forward. The mediator pushed the sealed packet across the table and said, "We can begin when you are ready." Maya's fingers hovered above the paper before she pushed it back an inch. Betrayal had been named aloud in the lobby earlier. Here it pressed into the white folder and into the look on Ethan's face. Maya kept her hand on the edge of the table and let her eyes move over the room like she was taking inventory. The mediation room smelled of lemon sanitizer and printer toner. The window showed a slice of street and a passing cab. Nothing about that outside felt relevant. Inside, the envelope made the conflict immediate. Maya, the mediator, Ava, folded her hands to have an agenda. "Ethan's submitted documentation is on the table. If you'd like to look through it now." Maya nodded without speaking. She had not spoken when she stepped between the revolving door and Ethan in the lobby. She had not spoken when she pressed the gold locket into her palm on the rooftop. She did not need to speak to know what the envelope might contain. Ethan's knuckles whitened as he rested his palm on the folder's corner. He swallowed. He arranged the sessions. He said he cancelled the trips. "I wrote down my plan." His voice had the practiced cadence that had gotten him through boardroom deals, but now the steady rhythm hit empty places. Maya opened the folder and read item by item. Therapy receipts stamped with dates. An email chain where he had asked for time off. A printed list titled "Plan to Make Amends" with specific steps, weekly check-ins, shared calendar access, joint counseling, financial transparency. The list was tidy. The list wanted to convert guilt into tasks. Lena kept her hands folded in her lap like she was holding a kettle. She watched every page Maya turned. She had been at the lobby when Maya seized Ethan's phone. She had been at the rooftop when the suitcase clicked. Lena's presence shifted the room. She was not neutral, Ethan. These documents are dated after the first message to that hotel number, Lena. She set her phone on the table and tapped a screen. You texted, need to meet on March 14th. Your first therapy receipt is March 20th. Lena's voice was steady. That is not 2 months of work. That is 6 days. Her tempo spit explained that Ethan blinkety I started privately before that. The receipts you see are for group sessions. He reached for the packet, a movement that was half pleading, half ownership. Maya. I didn't tell you because I wasn't ready to say. I was failing. Maya's jaw tightened. She had long rehearsed responses during sleepless weeks. She had imagined every way to force the truth out. Now she kept her mouth shut and let the evidence speak. Her fingers tapped the paper once, twice. Suspicion had been the first thing that rose in her, the raw needle that had driven her to pry into his phone in the lobby. The suspicion had become anger in the doorway when Ethan pushed the mediation letter across the tile. Now that anger moved toward a careful, colder appraisal. Maya Ava looked at her by name. What do you need from this packet to feel like this is real? The question made the room lean in. Maya answered with a short sentence. I need timelines that match actions. She slid a small square of paper across the table. It was the photocopy Lena had insisted they bring, a receipt from a cafe dated March 10th with Ethan's card initials in the corner. This is March 10th. Lene says counseling started after March 20th. Ethan's mouth threaded into a line. There are private sessions that won't appear on a public statement. I never wanted to make excuses. He breathed and ran a hand over his neck. Maya, I know how that looks. I know it looks like him buying forgiveness with paperwork. Not. Maya looked at him. She saw the thin scar along his jaw. She saw the way he avoided her eyes, the practiced smile that softened just enough when he tried to ask for mercy. She had seen him in the lobby when the keycard lit his access, and she had asked, "Why is there a hotel address on your phone?" She had seen the suitcase click on the rooftop like an accusation. Those were concrete. She touched the worn gold locket through her shirt and felt the weight she had carried since the rooftop. An hour remained before they'd be moved to the rooftop if negotiations failed. The mediator suggested a break. Ethan stood, gathering the papers like a man trying to collect himself. Lena followed him with a look that could have been kindness or a warning. In the corridor, Lena did not wait. Maya, come with me. Lena. She closed the mediation door behind them and walked fast. Don't let him buy time. She said, don't let him set the frame. They passed the revolving doors where the doorman still sat. A little man who had watched the lobby confrontation and now watched the pair move past, like he watched a slow theater scene. Lena pulled Maya toward the elevator and her voice dropped. He found something in Ethan's sent folder. She thrust her phone toward Maya, showing a calendar invite. March 9th. Dinner with her. He sent it at 11:50 on March 8th. That is before the coffee receipt. Maya watched the time stamp. Her pulse stepped in the same cadence as the elevator's hum. Her suspicion pivoted to a new angle. Not only had he lied about timing, he had tried to overlay a narrative where remorse came before contact with the other person. The suspicion hardened into a different feeling, a need to test everything until either trust could be rebuilt or the whole thing had to be left behind. They returned to the mediation room and told Ava about the conflicting timestamps. Ava called building security to confirm logs. That was the external event that broke the room's slow gravity. While Ava spoke, Ethan's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it once and then, with a face that betrayed involuntary fear, set its screen down. The phone notification was a small, precise thing, a one-line message that read, "Call me when you have a minute." The sender's name did not appear on the screen. Just a number. Lena's eyes locked on the phone and she stood up. Who is that? Lena demanded. Her voice was sharp. Who is that number? The conversation that followed snapped into a rapid series of exchanges. Ethan, who is that? Lena, it's nobody. Ethan began. Oh, tell us. Lena's words came quicker. It's a vendor. Ethana vendor. The rapid back and forth accelerated. Me, your vendor calls. were blocked from texting Maya. Please, Ethan's voice lower. Edie, didn't I swear I did not. Ethan Maya used his name to hold the moment. Put the phone face up. It was not a demand of drama. It was a test. Ethan hesitated. The city outside moved on autopilot. A truck idled. A woman with a grocery bag walked past the lobby. The elevator chimed. Inside, something small and decisive took shape. He laid the phone screen up. The message sender now showed a name, A. Suarez. The name hit like a detail that rearranged the map in her head. Maya felt a new shift, from measured appraisal to sudden, bright clarity, and a cold sinking that told her she had options, but they were fewer than she had hoped. Lina read the thread quickly and then slid the phone toward Maya. There are calls on March 11th. Multiple missed calls. Lina's voice lost some of its speed and became steady with the new information. You wrote that you started therapy after March 20th. Ethan. The timeline doesn't add up. Ethan searched for words. His practiced cadence Edie was trying to protect you from details. I thought if it was over, you wouldn't have to know everything. I was wrong. I see that now. He looked at Maya as if the right words would appear if he concentrated hard enough. Maya felt a flicker of the old anger. She thought of the rooftop when she had pressed the locket into her palm. She thought of the lobby with the hotel address on his phone. She thought of the mediation letter pushed across the tile. Each event had been a small concretion of evidence. Her decisions had to be concrete. Toothen, she said, short and even. Way, didn't you tell me? He shut his eyes for a beat and then opened them. He was ashamed. I was afraid of losing everything. Lina, call security and ask for the visitor logs for apartment 1275. Now Maya's voice carried a practical force. She used Lena's name and the instruction because she needed someone else moving on her behalf. Lena's fingers flew across her phone. While they waited, Ava suggested moving the session to the rooftop to speak, where no one would overhear the building staff. The mediator used the rooftop as neutral ground once before when emotions became unmanageable. The suggestion was procedural, but the move carried emotional freight. The rooftop had been the place where Maya had earlier pressed the locket and looked into Than's face and heard the suitcase click. They took the service elevator and moved upward. The car smelled faintly of machine oil. At each floor, the doors opened and the corridor gave nothing away. When the service door clicked open onto the rooftop staging area, the city hit them in a different way, closer, louder, and geometric. The rooftop garden was sunlit and had a neat line of potted boxwood. The skyline cut across the background. Maya's hands found the locket's chain in her sweater pocket. She pulled it out and ran a thumb over the dull gold. Ethan stood at the railing and folded his hands. He tried to speak, but a security guard called down the stairwell with a clipped voice and rattled a new update. Visitor logs confirmed. Apartment 1275 had a delivery on March 10th at 9:43 p.m. That arrival was a precise fact. It landed like a weight in the space between them. Maya nothing for a beat. All the small things rearranged, receipts, texts, invitations. The rooftop light lit lines on Ethan's face and the thin scar along his jaw. Lina stood a little to the side, palms pressed together as if holding herself steady. Ethan turned to her. Maya, listen, he spoke quickly now. It was a mistake. That night was a mistake. I'm sorry. I stopped it. I stopped it the next day. I tried to cut contact. Lena's hands tightened into a small fist. You didn't stop it. You texted. You met. The logs say otherwise. Her voice rose and then settled into a rapid, sharp. Lin knew her. She was special. You her you'd leave if she asked. You her she could call any time. Ethan didn't. I didn't tell her that. Stop saying things you don't know. They collided in 3 quick exchanges. Ethan. You lied about the hotel number. And I didn't lie about what I felt. Ethan, what you felt doesn't give you rights to lie to me. Lina shot back. The argument was small and raw. Maya listened, tracking every movement in his mouth and every tremor in Lina's voice. She felt the emotion shift again, anger to something like wary calculation. Instead of a roar, she chose an instruction. Ethan, Show me all your messages for March and April on this phone. Put them on speaker. Let Ava witness them. Let Lena watch. Maya spoke in a tone that did not plead. She for proof instead. He hesitated and then handed his phone over. Ava took it with a protocol's care, flipping through threads while the wind cut at the hem of Maya's sweater. The device unlocked under Ethan's thumb. The message history filled the rooftop's small stage like a ledger. What they saw were short messages, a handful of seemingly innocuous lines, and then a single photo sent on March 10th at 9:41 p.m. A snapshot of the city from a building across the street with a caption. Come up. That small image was a concrete pivot. It was precise, time-stamped, and linked to the delivery on the same night. Lena read the message out loud. Come up. She repeated the line slowly. Ethan's throat moved. I thought it would be nothing. I didn't know it would go this far. Maya felt the emotion shift again from wounded hope to clear-eyed resolve. She had expected confession, for him to unspool some story that would explain away the timeline. Instead, she had more facts. She folded those facts against the locket in her hand and felt how what was personal could be proof. Maya, I want to rebuild this with you, Ethan. He took a step toward her, and then stop it. He will sign an agreement. I will let you see everything. I will let you set the boundaries. I'll do anything that helps. Maya looked at him and then at Lena. She thought of the way she had kept her shoulders slightly forward when guarded. She thought of the thin wedding band she no longer wore openly, and the small crescent scar near her right eyebrow that rose when she blinked fast. These were the physical facts of her life. She had choices to make that would alter those facts in small, visible ways. Ethan, say one concrete thing you will do now to prove you understand what you broke. Her voice was low and clear. I'll sign the transparency agreement. I'll turn over my calendars for 6 months. I'll let you have access to my accounts. I'll pause work travel for 3 months. I'll start couples therapy weekly and individual therapy twice a month. I'll give you access to my phone records for review. I'll stop all contact with a Suarez and block the number myself in front of you now. He recited the list with a voice that tried to convert plea into procedure. Lena exhaled and her expression softened by a fraction. Those are the words. Words are step one. She looked at Maya. What do you want? Lena. Her tone was both blunt and tender. Maya's voice was measured. I want to know whether his actions match his words. I want to know whether I can stay without losing myself. I don't want a theatrical public forgiveness. I want specific boundaries and proof. If he can't or won't follow them, then the answer is clear. There was a long pause where rooftop air and city sound pooled between them. Ethan placed both hands on the railing. He watched the street below as if he could manufacture a new past by scanning a give me a list of a make it exact. If Maya asks for something particular, write it down and well witness it. The mediator's tone had the bureaucratic steadiness that made agreements enforceable. Maya drew a breath and then, in short sentences, listed her conditions. She for written agreement on therapy frequency. She for calendar sharing. She for a direct block and verification of all numbers. She for 3 months without business travel and immediate restriction on unsupervised, unreported contact with the other person. She for a written admission that what happened had harmed her, and an explicit apology directed to her name. Ethan repeated each item as she spoke, sometimes stumbling, sometimes steady. He signed the first form Ava produced and watched as Lena took a picture of the signature with a small exhale. The rooftop tension eased in increments, but did not disappear. The thin lines of trust would not reknit overnight. They returned to the mediation room to formalize the list. Ava typed the agreement while the 3 of them read, corrected, and initialed clauses. Each signature felt like a small, testable choice. Each clause was a way to convert a plea into a measurable pattern. Weeks later, the mediated measures produced sequences of small events. Maya slept better some nights. Ethan attended sessions and occasionally sent Maya a short message about what he had learned. Lena reminded Maya to check the shared calendar. At times, the new routine felt like a scaffold holding a fragile house. It kept things upright but did not make them whole. One morning, 3 weeks after the rooftop decision, Lena arrived at Maya's apartment with 2 coffee cups and an armful of groceries. They moved through the living room like 2 people practicing domestic normalcy. The gold locket lay in plain sight on the mantel for the first time. The work of rebuilding was small tasks: buying lemons, measuring tea, fixing a lamp. They talked about practicality. Have you checked the banking statements? I have. Maya has shared them. I scanned everything. Her voice evened out in the way of someone practicing new motions. An unexpected event then arrived. A courier left a plain envelope on the hallway mat outside Maya's door. Lena found it first when she walked ahead to drop the grocery bag. She held it up with a tilt of her head and a question in her face. Maya crossed the short span of hall and took the envelope. It had no return address. Her name was written by hand in a precise block script. She looked at Lena and then at the envelope. Her heart tightened in an ordinary way, not metaphorical, a conscious tightening in her chest. Inside the envelope was a single object, a small square photograph of the rooftop skyline taken from a low angle and a tiny folded note. The photograph showed the railing where they had stood and a small smudge near the right corner where Maya had once placed the locket. The note had a single line in Ethan's handwriting: "I am sorry. I will let you choose the next step." There was no plea beyond that single, simple sentence. It was concrete. It nothing of her except to choose. Maya looked at the picture and then at Lena. The emotion shifted one more time from guarded procedure to a careful, private steadiness. She moved with a small, decisive action. She folded the photograph in half and placed it into the envelope. She slid her thumb across the crease and then sealed the envelope again. "What will you do?" Lena softly. Maya put the sealed envelope into her bag, clipped the worn gold locket to the chain on the mantel, and then turned the deadbolt on her door. "He will not be rushed," she said. "He will watch his actions. I will protect my life. I will take the next step if it matches my terms." Her sentence was not rhetorical. It was a set of instructions. Lena put a hand on Maya's shoulder and squeezed. "Whatever you decide, I will back you, Lena." Her promise had the clear cadence of someone who would act, not just speak. Maya nodded. She set the bag down and removed the sealed envelope, placing it in the center of her kitchen table. The sunlight through the living room window hit the paper's edge and threw a thin line across the wood. She sat and watched the line like it was an instrument marking time. Days passed with small tests. Ethan attended therapy and sent monthly progress notes to Maya and Ava. He checked off items on the agreed list. He missed one scheduled session and called immediately to explain. He let Lena speak with his therapist once when Maya requested it. Each action was a data point. Each absence was a question. 6 weeks later, a man from Ethan's office left a white folder at Maya's door labeled verification. Inside were detailed schedules and logs. He had made changes. He had blocked numbers in front of witnesses. He had stopped travel for the agreed period and had a note from his therapist confirming attendance. The folder did not erase the hotel message, the coffee receipt, or the rooftop picture. It did, however, convert contrition into recorded steps. The final visible test arrived on a windless afternoon when Maya watched an email arrive, an attachment of a letter Ethan had written directly to her. Not as a legal form but as a personal admission. He had written, "I chose badly. I hurt you. I own that. I will not ask for immediate forgiveness. I will show you I can be consistent. I will accept whatever boundaries you set." He had added a sentence that did not plead, "Take the time you need. I will not make choices for you. I will live with the consequences if my actions mean losing you." The letter was not a dramatic turning point. It was a concrete offering. Maya read it twice, kneading the locket between her fingers. The emotion inside her was no longer the jagged spike of suspicion, but a layered response: pain, caution, a slow measure of curiosity. She felt clearer than in weeks. She could name what she wanted, time, transparency, and a pattern of consistent action. 2 months after the rooftop, they met again in the mediation room to assess the agreement's progress. Ava read from the checklist. Items were checked, some with notes, some with requests for extensions. They argued over language about private attendance and verification protocols. When the meeting closed, Ethan walked Maya to the elevator. They stood in the doorway like two people at the end of a careful negotiation. "May I ask you one more thing?" Ethan, he was small now, stripped of corporate posture. "If I continue to follow the plan, will you give me an actual chance to rebuild? Not a timetable, not a guarantee, but a measure tied to behavior." He used her name. He waited. Maya looked at him for a long beat. She thought of the locket on the mantel. She thought of the photograph in the sealed envelope that sat in her kitchen. She thought of the concrete steps he had taken and the ones he still needed to take. She did not look away. "Ethan," she said, "slow and decisive. If your actions match your promises for 6 months without major deviation, I will consider opening a path. Not for us to go back to what we were, but to see whether a different, honest relationship can exist. If at any point your actions contradict your promises, I will end it. No second guessing. No gradual erosion." He exhaled a sound that could have been relief or fury. "Understand. He said he will do it." They did not kiss on the elevator. They did not make a dramatic public reunion. They signed another line on a form and left with the small actions of people trying to keep an agreement. In the weeks after, Maya built new routines. She kept the locket out but seldom wore it. She returned the thin wedding band to a drawer and left it there as a memory rather than a current marker. On an ordinary dusk, she returned from work to find the same plain envelope on her hallway mat. Her name was written in the same block script. Lena saw it first and handed it to her. This time, she opened it without Lena. The photograph inside was different. A recent skyline shot with a sticky note attached to the back. The note had one line: "I will let you choose what happens next. Take your time." Maya folded the note and placed it inside the envelope. She left the photograph on the mantel by the locket. Then she did a small, exact thing. She wrote in her own hand across the front of the envelope, "Received." Holding for review, she addressed the envelope with her handwriting and placed it on a high shelf in her closet, where she kept papers that mattered. Lena, if she wanted to respond, "Not yet. May I want to see 3 full months of consistent behavior. Then I will make a decision." Not an emotional verdict, but a practical evaluation. She used the word decision rather than hope. The language was concrete. That evening, Maya lay out the timeline she would follow on a small legal pad. She listed measurable items: weekly therapy check-ins, missed session protocol, calendar audits, and an independent verification point at 3 months. She folded the pad and slipped it into the envelope where the photograph lay. She sealed it and placed it back on the shelf. The rooftop decision had not ended everything. It had converted emotions into instruments. It had forced each of them to show how much they trusted behavior over language. For Maya, the final choice had not been a sudden forgiveness. It had been a sequence of measure and witness actions anchored in the rooftop moment and supported by the mediation clauses she had insisted upon. At dusk, she stood at her window and looked at the city silhouette. The locket glinted on the mantel. The sealed envelope waited on a shelf. She turned the deadbolt and locked the door. The lock snapped solid. The precise sound closed the chapter on the rooftop decision and opened a new, careful space for what would come next. The hallway light clicked on as Lena left. The envelope's paper edge caught the last thin strip of sunlight before the room went to soft indoor light. Maya ran a thumb along the envelope and then set it down intentionally. The final action of the chapter is small and definite. Maya walks to the hall, retrieves the mediated agreement file, and slides it into the front page of the envelope with the photograph visible, then turns the key in the lock once more. The sound of that key is the last thing the chapter leaves you, on a concrete click that signals a decision being held. watched, and enforced by the person who was betrayed and who now chooses how she will be respected.